We continue now at the top of Daf Peites Amud Aleph in Mesechet Yevamos. This is Yevamos Daf 89a. The Gemara is in the middle of quoting from a Mishnah later on. The Mishnah discusses a case where a woman believes that her husband has died, and therefore she is betrothed by another man. She doesn't marry him, but she has an eris and a kiddushin with this second man. And so the Gemara had suggested on the previous Amud that in such a situation, even though she really is not married to that second man, she would require a get on a drabanan level. Otherwise, people might get confused and think that the woman is leaving this husband or this man that she betrothed without a get. And so then the Gemara says, no, really it means that she does need a get on a drabanan level. And so the Gemara now quotes the end of that Mishnah, and the end of that Mishnah says that even though shenasan lo acharon get, even though that later person did give her a get, lo pasla min kahuna, she's not disqualified from kahuna, meaning to say she's not considered to be a grusha. Rashi over here says shenasan lo acharon get she'irsa, the one who betrothed her, he went ahead and gave her a get. That get does not make her a grusha, and it does not disqualify her from the kahuna. And so the Gemara continues, mechlal, that line in the Mishnah implies the lo boy get, that really she does not require a get, even on a drabanan level. The boy get, because if there was a requirement for a get in this case, amai lo pasla min kahuna, why shouldn't she be disqualified from the kahuna? Any kind of get, whether it's required on a doraisa level or a drabanan level, should disqualify her from marrying a kohen. Rashi over here says, mechlal de lo boy get, afilu mi drabanan. Sounds like she doesn't require a get, even drabanan. The boy get, because if she required a get, hakai malan, we have established afilu reach a get, posalakun, even if it just has the smell of a get, so to speak, that is enough to disqualify her from the kahuna. And so the Gemara continues, Ella rather, Seifa Amri Kiddushay Tos Have. In the situation of the Seifa, people are going to think that it was a Kiddushin that was done by mistake. Rashi over here says, Seifa Legabe Kiddushin Vade Kiddukamra de lo boy get. The Gemara now, according to Rashi, is retracting from what it said before and saying, no, in the case of this Mishnah over here that we're quoting, where the second person didn't marry her, but he just had a Kiddushin with her, there actually a get is not required. So you had a kasha, why not make the same gezerah? Maybe people will get confused and think that she's leaving, that she had a real kiddushin and she's leaving without a get. So lo asi l'memar hachi, people will not get confused. They won't say that. Ela amri, rather they're going to say midanafka below get, from the fact that she's leaving without a get. Kiddushay tos have, it must have been a kiddushin by mistake. Kegon al menashani kohen v'nim so Yisrael. Maybe they did a kiddushin on condition he was a kohen. He turned out to be Yisrael. Whatever the mistake may have been. But the Gemara says if that's the case, Reisha Nami. Well, you could say the same thing in the case of the Reisha, where it was a case of marriage and not Kiddushin. Amri Nisue Tos Havi. Maybe people will say the same thing, that it was a Nisuin that was done by mistake. And so the Gemara says, no, Kansua Rabbanan. In that case, the Rabbanan give a fine on her, and they say she does require a get. As Rashi over here says, Kansua Rabbanan v'lo talina lakula. We don't make that lenient argument in the case of Nisuin. And the Gemara says, Seifa nami liknesua. Okay, so in the Seifa also, why don't we give her a fine in that case? And the Gemara explains very simply, Reisha da'avde isura kansu. In the Reisha, she actually did an isur because she had relations here and she was a married woman. Seifa de lo avde isura, but in the Seifa where there is no isur involved, lo kansur rabbanan, was just a case of kiddushin. There's no isur, and therefore the rabbanan did not put a fine in this place, and they did not require a get. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Ein laksuba, again in the case where she thought her husband had died and she married a second man. Turns out he was alive and it was a situation of adultery, so she's not entitled to ksuba. So the Gemara says, My time takinu lo rabbanan ksuba. What is the reason why the rabbanan instituted a ksuba? Kadesh lo take kala bein of lotzi, in order that it's not too easy for the husband, too easy in his eyes, to divorce her. We want to prevent the husband from divorcing her easily, so now there's going to be a significant ksuba payment that he has to make in such a situation. But in this case, on the contrary, but in this case over here where she's committed adultery, again, it's not a situation where she committed adultery on purpose, but she was with another man when she thought her husband had died and he had not died. So in this case, on the contrary, in this case, on the contrary, we want it to be easy in his eyes for him to divorce her. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Ein la peiros, velo mezonos, velo belos. She's not entitled to the fruits. She's not entitled to sustenance. She's not entitled to the worn-out clothing. And the Gemara explains, Tanai ksuba k'ksuba dami. These are all things that are conditions that are placed into the ksuba. They have the same status as the ksuba. Therefore, since she's not entitled to ksuba, she doesn't get these items as well. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Natla mizeh. It says that if she takes any of these items from these men, these items that she's not entitled to, so then she has to return it. The Gemara says, Pshita, isn't that obvious? So the Gemara says, no, ma'u detema, because what might you have thought? Kevan detafsa lo mafkinan mino. Since she's already taken it, maybe we don't take it away from her. It was just a fine that she's not entitled. But maybe if she already gets it, she can keep it. Kamash malan. So again, the Mishnah teaches us that she has to return that. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Havlad Mamzer, that the child of either one of these men, again, is going to be considered a Mamzer when she was with the second man thinking that her husband had died and he had not really died. And the Gemara now says, Tanan Hassam, we learned in a Mishnah over there, this is a Mishnah in Truma. It says, Ein Tormin min atame al atar, you can't take Truma from Tame food on something that's Tahar. V'im Taram, but if he does so, B'shogeg, so if he does it by mistake, Truma, so it's still going to be considered good Truma. B'mezid lo asav lo klum, but if he does it on purpose, it's nothing. So the Gemara now asks, "My lo asav v'lo klum." What does it mean that it's nothing? Amar Rav Chisda says, "Lo asav v'lo klum kolikar." What he has done is absolutely nothing; it has no effect whatsoever. Te'afilu ahi griva hadar l'tivle, meaning even that part that he separated, that small portion that was made into truma, that goes back to being tevel. It has no status of truma. Rav Nasim Rabbi Yoshia says, Lo asav v'lo klum l'saken es hashirayim. He did nothing in terms of fixing that which was left over, meaning that which he took the truma, he separated the truma, and that which was remaining is still going to be considered tevel. Aval truma have it, but the part that he actually separated, that he declared truma, is going to have the status of truma. And the Gemara continues, Rav Chisda lo amar Rav Nasim Rabbi Yoshia. Rav Chisda did not say like Rav Nasim Rabbi Yoshia, meaning to say that he says that it does not have the status of truma. Why? The Amr have a truma, because if you said like Rav Nasim Rabbi Yoshia and you said it did have the status of truma, so then zimnin depasha v'lo mafresh, then the person might make a mistake and he's not going to further separate truma. He's going to think it worked completely, it fixed everything, he doesn't need to separate anymore. So therefore it's better that we say that it's not going to have the status of truma, and the person realizes he has to separate again. And the Gemara now continues, but if that's the case, what's the difference between the following Mishnah? The Mishnah says, Hatorem kishus v'nimtzas mora, avatiach v'nimtzas saruach. It says, let's say the person separates the kishus, he separates truma from a melon, it turns out that it's bitter, or he separates from a watermelon, it turns out it's spoiled, meaning he thought that he was separating good food over here, and it's really not good food, it's already spoiled. So the halach is truma, that part which he separates does have the status of truma, v'yachzor v'yitrum, but then he should go and he should take truma again. In other words, that which he separated counts as truma, but he has to separate again, because it doesn't take care of the remainder. That remainder is still considered tavel until he does it again. And so the question over here is that we see in this case that we're not worried that the person is not going to realize that he needs to separate further. That does not concern us. We say it's considered truma, and we say that we can rely on the person to separate further. So it's a question on Rav Chisda, because on the contrary, Rav Nasim Rabbi Yoshia seems to be correct that there's no problem declaring it truma. So first the Gemara now says, Shogeg amezid karamis. You're asking a question in a case of Shogeg. From a case of Mezid, you can't ask. When we were talking before, we're talking about a situation of Mezid, and that's where Rav Chisda says that it's not even considered truma. But in this case, it was by mistake. The person didn't realize it was bitter or spoiled, and therefore that's why it's considered truma. That's what the Gemara explains. Shogeg lo avid isura. By the case of Shogeg, the person did nothing wrong. Mezid kavid isura. But by the case of Mezid, the person did something wrong, so it's a different case. But the Gemara continues, V'rami shogeg ha-shogeg, but we could still have a contradiction of a case of shogeg against the case of shogeg. Because hacha katani, because over here, what did we say? We said, b'shogeg truma so truma. We said that in the case, again, you're separating from the tamei on the tar, whatever the case is. So if you do b'shogeg, it's still going to be good truma, and that means it's fully good truma. You don't need to separate further. But hasam, but over there, in the case where you didn't realize that it was bitter or spoiled, katani truma v'yachzer v'yitrum, it says it's truma, but you have to take off truma again, so that's still a contradiction. And so the Gemara answers, no, Hasam over there in that case, Shogeg Karav Lemezid, that's already a Shogeg, but it's close to Mezid. The Iboy Le Limitami, because really he should have tasted it, he should have made sure that this was actually good food. But the Gemara continues, V'rama Mezid ha-Mezid, but we could also have a contradiction of Mezid cases against Mezid cases, because again, Hacha Gatani v'Mezid lo asa klum. Here we said that if he did it on purpose, again, the case where you're taking from the Tameh on the Tar, etc., that's considered like you did nothing. But Hasam Tanan, but over there we learn the Mishnah as follows. The Mishnah says, Hatorah misha'ein nokov al nokov. Let's say a person takes truma from food that grows inside a pot and it does not have a hole, so meaning it's not getting any nutrients from the ground, and he takes from there and he does it on a potted plant where there is a hole in the bottom of the pot, and that in that case it actually is getting sustenance from the actual earth and has a real chiyuv in truma. So the halacha over there is truma v'yachzor v'yitrum. It's considered truma, but you have to take truma again. So again, over here it seems to say that what you did is considered truma, and you have to take truma again. And over there it's saying v'mezid, it's like you didn't do anything. And so the Gemara says, "Betray money tzayis bechad money lo tzayis." When you're talking about two different vessels, so over there the person's going to listen, he'll realize, but by one, the person will not realize. As Rashi over here explains, betray money tzayis, when it's in two different pots, like in that case, the person will listen to us, and he'll take again. Kolomar hasam kaven to betray money ki amr le hadar tarm. If we tell the guy and it was from two different pots, and we say you have to take again, meidach from the other one, tzayis lach, he's going to listen, he's going to realize he might have done it wrong. V'lekol migzar dilma pash. You don't have to worry that the guy's going to mess up and not take truma again. But in the case where you're taking from Tameh and Tar and we're making him do it again, the Tarvaya Bechad Moneh Rab, because they both grew in the same pot, B'yotzes Nokov, in a pot that had a hole in the bottom and was getting sustenance from the ground. Ki Amr Leitein Zu V'chazor V'hafresh Acheres, when we say do it all over again, Eino Shomelach, he's not going to listen to you. And instead, V'nosin Es Hatzmei LeKohen, he's just going to give the Tameh Truma to the Kohen. Umutav Ta'achzor Zu L'Tivla V'yitin Tahor LeKohen. It's better that we say that what he did is totally nothing, and it becomes Tevel again, and then he'll give something pure to the Kohen. And this last contradiction, of course, was following the opinion of Rav Chisda that lo asav lo klum meant that it's not truma at all, even the part you separated. And now the Gemara asks a question on Rav Nasan Rabbi Yoshia. Well, Rav Nasan Rabbi Yoshia, Damar, according to Rav Nasan Rabbi Yoshia, who says, Damar, that he says lo asav lo klum lasakin shirayim aval truma have. He says that you did nothing in terms of fixing the remainder, but the part which you separated again in the case where you took from the Tameh al Atar is still considered truma. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Peites Amud Beis.